Free will is a thing I cannot think of not having. At the same time, it's a thing also I cannot really make sense of having, in and about the different forms of evolution and the different levels of cultural engineering and cultural pressures and societal pressures and bashing here and there that gets to happen in one's life. But that is a conversation for another day. At the heart of the conversations around destiny helpers, around village people, are very basic things. Very basic things that we ordinarily have not sat down to ask ourselves and have not sat down to really get the real answers to these problems. When a car accident happens, first thing we tend to think of is, who has this person offended? Who has this person done something that ordinarily must have warranted the person to ordinarily want to take this person's life? But what we fail to ask is that the road this person ordinarily was plying, the road this person was traveling on, was it well constructed? If the road was well constructed, was there mechanical failure from the car? When was the last time the person checked the car? Were the tires okay? Was the economy affecting the person to the point where the person couldn't change the tires of the car? Or were the funds allocated for such a road diverted to a private account, or substandard products were being sold in terms of brake pad, brake shoe, engine oil, accelerators, and the different stuff that become a car in the first place, and the different thing that makes it possible to get to use such a car in a place like Nigeria. Every day in Nigeria, one picks up one phone in the morning, in the afternoon, be it whatever time of the day, and then tries to go through the internet to see one or two things happening down there. And what one begins to see leaves one sad, leaves one angry, leaves one confused as to what ordinarily life ordinarily means for them and how ordinarily life should go. And in and about this stuff, you get to see people coming up with different mantras as to how they should lead their life, as to how they ordinarily should go about the day to day activities in the country. And in and about these mantras is the concept of trying to give people hope, trying to sell them a hope that ordinarily isn't visible for them to get to see, a hope that they ordinarily seem to not grasp, or hope that is not even there to even start with. You have the idea of the destiny helper. So, as you are created as a human being, you are created in and about another helper who is there to ordinarily help you to become the person you ordinarily were supposed to be. You find the idea of the village people also. And in and about the idea of the village people is the concept that as much as you are so broke that you stay in the village, you should be suspected. As much as you are a villager, as much as you've not made it enough to leave the so-called village, then you are part of the problem. So somebody dies of an illness that ordinarily is due to ill fate and poor infrastructure. It is tied to the village people. And when somebody gets a job by one or two corrupt practices here and there, or even let's even say without corrupt practices, giving a letter to somebody or submitting your certificate and your CV to a particular person, and the person helps you take this to the right place ordinarily, you ordinarily should be able to assess on your own. This person becomes your destiny helper, or somebody leaves you with a few dollars here and there. This person is termed your destiny helper, and for the rest of your life, you shouldn't criticize such a person, because this destiny helper of yours is somebody you should cherish so much so that you shouldn't criticize the person. Because why do you want to criticize your own destiny helper? Why should you criticize somebody who's helped you over the years. And it becomes a trap one way or the other. And you also find the idea of the village people coming to play in a different light also. The light that people cannot go to the village comfortably because the village help the village people would be there to attack them one way or the other. So we begin to find people live in the cities, in our various cities, and we find them being so afraid of going back to the village because for the life of me, I still don't understand that particular concept of the village people. So that a woman posted something a few days ago of somebody dying, barely how many weeks of getting married, and it was tied to the village people have, come to do what they ordinarily know how to do best. They have come to take away this person's. They have come to take away this person's destiny. So you have destiny snatchers also down the other side. They get to switch destinies and they get to do different voodoos and they get to do different things that ordinarily change people's way of life and change people's way of thinking and change people's way of living. But people forget to understand that at the heart of the concept of a destiny, a helper, or at the heart of the conversation of destiny snatchers is the fact that one must come to nonetheless believe in determinism. And with the idea of determinism, one comes to see to it that it doesn't ordinarily hold sway. The idea of the idea of being deterministic, it's something that is troubling for me, and I don't I don't want to I don't want to give in to the promises it gets to offer because it leaves almost everything to be called into question. And again, at the same time, free will is a thing I cannot think of not having. At the same time, it's a thing also I cannot really make sense of having in and about the different forms of evolution and the different levels of cultural engineering and cultural pressures and societal pressures and bashing here and there that gets to happen in one's life. But that is a conversation for another day. At the heart of the conversations around destiny helpers, around village people, are very basic things. Very basic things that we ordinarily have not sat down to ask ourselves and have not sat down to really get the real answers to these problems. When a car accident happens, the first thing we tend to think of is who has this person offended? Who has this person not offended? Who has this person done something that ordinarily must have warranted the person to ordinarily want to take this person's life? But what we fail to ask is that the road this person ordinarily was plying, the road this person was traveling on, was it well constructed? If the road was well constructed, was there mechanical failure from the car? When was the last time the person checked the car? Were the tires okay? Was the economy affecting the person to the point where the person couldn't change the tires of the car? Or were the funds allocated for such a road diverted to a private account, or substandard products were being sold in terms of brake pad, brake shoe, engine oil, accelerators, and the different stuff that become a car in the first place, and the different thing that makes it possible to get to use such a car in a place like Nigeria. When we fail to ask these questions, when we fail to really look at these problems, and when we fail to look at the key problems and tie everything to our superstitious beliefs and tie everything to hypothetical and suggestive forms of beliefs we get to hold here and there, we continue to go down this particular path, and it does no good to you, it does no good to me, it doesn't help anybody, it doesn't go far. And our religious leaders also aren't helping matters. Our philosophers are not helping matters as it concerns how ordinarily things were supposed to be. For as long as we continue to peddle this particular idea of destiny helpers, this idea of village people as being very mischievous and always monitoring us and almost wanting to always come to get to meet us here and there, and we not living it at the place of fantasy, and we taking such to the realms of realities and taking such to the realms of spiritual stalking and spiritual monitoring and spiritual GPS and the conversations in and about this. As much as we continue to move on and grow in this particular direction, we find ourselves asking lots of questions, and we won't get answers. Why won't we get answers? We won't get answers because we would have left the real cause and the real problem to ordinarily fade away, as opposed to constantly looking at the problems as they are. Because by the time we must have shifted our sense of understanding and our sense of oneness and our sense of understanding of the root cause of the problem, and now we are now looking at other things that ordinarily shouldn't be looked at, we come to that point where we have already lost the argument and we've already lost our quest, because we are dealing at this point with a different thing other than the problem itself, and we cannot really trace the problem back to the root of where we ordinarily should be doing. And where would that lie? It will lie in the fact that we will continue to grow and we will continue to live our lives here into the future without really coming to understand what our problems are, without ordinarily coming to task our leaders and task as many persons as possible to really come to be responsible as they ordinarily should. And we shouldn't forget the whole idea of training and the different ways in which we get to construct our roads and the engineers we empower to ordinarily construct these roads. What about the driver? Can the driver drive? Is the driver certified to drive? Has the driver been driving for a very long period of time? What ordinarily must have led to the accident? Because these things are the things we ordinarily should look at. And if the book about the death of John Paul I should be anything to write home about, is the need for autopsy and the need for checking and the need for ordinarily learning from previous experience, so that, like Karl Popper will get to say, over a long period of time of constant observation, we begin to look at patterns of things and say how ordinarily these things are supposed to be, as opposed to perpetually being in the state of perpetual skepticism as propounded by Hume and the likes of philosophers that get to say we cannot really get to know almost anything. So that when you see the woman die in the labor ward, the first thing shouldn't be that the village people have come after her life. It should be the fact that we should be channeling the stuff to the right place. What were the stuffs that went down these precarious stages of pregnancy? Did she do her due diligence in ordinarily coming to follow the laid down procedures for a pregnant woman in the 21st century? Or she was sold the idea of giving birth as a Hebrew woman? Or was she admitted in a hospital properly so? And if she was admitted in a hospital, the personnel running the hospitals, are they professionals? Do they really know their job? When was the last time they tried to optimize their skills and make themselves up to date? When was the last time they looked at situations for what they are? When was the last time they decided on their own, when they go back home, to really look at the data and pick up their device, if it's their phone or whatsoever, and say, I am trying to check on this particular data, I'm trying to check on that particular data, and I want to really come to know and really come to understand what things ordinarily are supposed to be and what things ordinarily shouldn't be. And how is my studies to be influenced, and how is it to be maximized in the situation and in the area I find myself now into the future? These things are things we don't do. These things are things we don't really want to look at. Because you might have a doctor, but is the doctor qualified? You might even have a doctor, you might even have a hospital, but is a hospital well equipped to ordinarily see to it that things ordinarily work out well? Was the woman brought to the hospital on time? Is the road network ordinarily such that can be considered a standard road network in a well-planned city? Do we have roads that leads to the police station and roads that leads to the hospitals and roads that leads to schools and roads that leads to farms and roads that leads to markets as at when due and in the right proportion of things? How do we build our houses? Where do we stay? Was the woman properly ventilated? Was she properly nourished during the period that led to her coming to put to bed? When we must have looked at these stuffs and when we must have looked at these conversations and we've arrived at the fact that in and about everything have been, ticked one way or the other, we shouldn't stop there. We should probe a little bit further. And we should ask the question, was there supply of electricity in such a hospital? If there isn't, why isn't that being questioned? Why is the village people blamed for conversations and things they ordinarily shouldn't be blamed for? Where have we been when our leaders continually steal our funds? And who are our leaders to start with? Who are the leaders of the country? Is it your uncle? Is it my uncle? Is it your auntie? Is it my auntie? Is it your father? Is it my mother? Is it your brother? Is it my sister? These people in office, who are they? Where do they come from? Were they born out of space? Did they fall from the sky? Are there people we ordinarily should hold accountable for the problems happening in and about our lives? What should we do to them in the face of disenchantment? What should we do to them, and what should we do to ourselves in times of such difficulties, in times of such problems, in times where we ordinarily come to tell ourselves that, one way or the other, the problems we ordinarily are trying to fight are not problems born out of village people. The problems we fight and the challenges we have are problems born out of us putting our problems in the wrong spectrum. As such, the solutions we try to proffer will not work. And so you find people going to church to pray for things they ordinarily can do. And our preachers should be able to tell people the place of prayer, and people also should be able to know the place of hard work. Because you cannot pray and pray and pray and pray and pray for things you ordinarily can do for yourself. It takes away your sense of responsibility. It takes away from you your place of constant thinking and the ability of you being human, ability of you being a problem solver. It takes away more than you can bargain for. It takes away too much. It takes away too much from you. It takes away too much from us as a people, and it's not something we should ordinarily be proud of. We shouldn't be proud of the fact that so much is taken away from us, and our agencies becomes what we ordinarily don't even understand. It doesn't make sense. Today, tomorrow, into the future. It doesn't make sense now. It wouldn't make sense tomorrow. It wouldn't make sense ever. I hope we come to realize this particular stuff. That the president of the country doesn't get affected by the village people. That the rich man in his house doesn't ordinarily come to be so much affected by these so-called village people as we want to so-called believe. The village people are almost always after the poor and almost always after the very broke of society, those at the lower cadet of life. That the village people doesn't know how to ordinarily go after those well-guided, doesn't know how to go after our senators and our presidents and our ministers and our commissioners and the different parliamentarians we get to have, House of Reps, the House of Senate, and the members therein. Because they're simple questions and they're simple answers that ordinarily shouldn't be so complicated. If you do this, you get this. If you don't get this, you try to work on what you did wrong to ordinarily see to it that things ordinarily should be better. These are the things we are not having. These are the things we are not ready to look at. These are the things and the conversations we don't want to have. These are the conversations we don't even want to be told that we can have. And as much as we continue to beat around the bush and look at other things, rather than looking at infrastructure, rather than looking at our town planning, rather than looking at the ways in which we don't go to farm, and the ways in which we've come to tell ourselves that a thing like farming is a thing left for the poor. Where did we even buy that idea that farming is a thing left for the poor? Where did we buy the idea that farming, as important as it is, a thing that nobody can survive in this world without such a concept, without such a practice? Where did we buy this idea that farming all of a sudden, in 20 years, in 30 years, has come to be looked at as a thing that ordinarily shouldn't be proud of? We shouldn't be proud of. At what point did we get to this particular place in these 30, 40, 50 years of our recent life and our history that we tell ourselves that farming is not important? That we tell ourselves that, it's for poor people. It's to be left for them and them alone. And then we complain we don't have eggs, we don't have yams, we don't have banana, we don't have plantains, we don't have the things that were originally amongst our own people. How? When did we get here? How did we arrive at such conclusions? And what can we do to better our lives and better our situations? What can we do to better the things in our life, the things we ordinarily don't want to pay attention to? What can we do to see that our lives now into the future is to be looked at from a good vantage point, a point of reason, a point of order? When was the last time our politicians came to us and told us the things they want to do, and failure to do them, we hold them accountable? Just look at our parliamentarian. Just look at our National Assembly. And look at the state assemblies and ask yourselves, the way I ask myself, how did we get here, and who are those in the opposing side? How did we arrive at this current place where we cannot even differentiate between those opposing and those opposed? How? And yet we don't want to see these problems as problems. We don't want to see these things as the main problems. We want to be told that, other things are problems, other concerns are the concerns we ordinarily should be looking at, as opposed to the current realization of our lives now into the future. I am Biringkpa bin Nemeka. I am your brother, the mendicant, strolling this world with you. Please share this video with your family members, share it with your mom, carry on the message, and let's see how we ordinarily can begin to tackle our problems by ourselves, because our leaders just continue to hold on to these things, and they continue to hold on to these ways of thinking, and they continue to fuel them, and there are ways in which they do them. We should know the place for fantasy and the place of fantasy and leave it there, as opposed to the things we want to tell ourselves to be the answers to our life situation and the day-to-day experience we get to have as a people. The world can be better. We just need to change the ways in which we've come to tell ourselves things, and the ways in which we now look at culture to be. Culture is dynamic. Culture is fluid. Culture should be looked at from that perspective, and there shouldn't be a monopoly of culture. Culture should be moving, and it should be adjusting to the people. Not this thing we tell ourselves and these thoughts we struggle with in and about being stuck to a particular generation, being stuck to a particular way of doing things. See you next time.